Today on Let's Talk Love, I speak with John Kim, the angry therapist. We talk about self-care versus self-love, the hazards of losing yourself when you're single or in relationship, how to manage conflict with your partner, and about continually updating our definition of love. The overarching theme of our conversation is about building a strong relationship with yourself so that you can build healthy and meaningful relationships in your life. There are a lot of gems John has to share. Enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Let's Talk Love podcast. Today, I am so excited to welcome our guest, John Kim, the angry therapist. He is a licensed therapist, relationship and life coach, speaker, and best-selling author. He's written 3 books: The No BS Guide to Finding and Living Your Own Truth, I Used to Be a Miserable Fuck, and Single on Purpose, Find Yourself First. John offers no bullshit, uncomplicated, real-world experience and advice. He's someone his clients can relate to, and I know I can relate to John. We have worked together a few times in Real Love Ready. And John, I just want to thank you so much for giving us your time and wisdom today.
Of course, and thank you for having me. On many things, and now this podcast. So congratulations on the podcast, and also thank you for saying the word "fuck." I was at a bookstore once. I was at a bookstore signing once, and they said they didn't want to say the word, so they are like, the author of "I Used to Be a Miserable Fudge." And I was like, it's not the same. That sounds like a little piece of fudge that was not happy, and that's not my story.
Well, actually, John, that's where I wanted to start. I just wanted to ask you where the angry therapist came from. Why do you call yourself the angry therapist? How did that even start?
Well, at about 35, it's been like 13 years now. Went through a divorce and had to start all over with nothing. And this was before some social media, before Instagram, before I think Facebook was around. But I got on Tumblr because I had a lot of time, and I started to blog, and I didn't think anyone would read it. And I the angry therapist, partly because I thought it was funny that a therapist is angry, like a therapist actually expresses his feelings. And also, I used to be angry. I was unhappy. I was in my 20s and 30s. I was just busy chasing shiny things. I hit pause on life, and I didn't allow myself to be happy until I got the big things. The big things never came. And so I was miserable. And so I just thought it was a kind of a funny, appropriate title for a blog, and I didn't think anyone would read it. And then later, as I started to build a community, and people would ask me that question, I thought, you know what? It's actually my way of saying I'm human. Mm-hmm. And so this idea of humanizing the therapist, pulling the curtain back, showing yourself, because in therapy school, we're not really taught to do that. We're taught to be very neutral and be more of a cardboard cutout, right? And so me doing that kind of, I don't know, I feel like I hopped the fence. I feel like, I started to work in unconventional ways, starting with the tone.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you did say that in your book, that you were angry at the clinical approach, mm-hmm. right? The clinical system was broken in a lot of ways that you were experiencing.
Yeah. I started with a fire in my belly to help other people. And then by the time I got done, so I became a therapist because I was in my own therapy, and, mm-hmm. and my own therapist was like, the screenwriting isn't working. What do you want to do? What would you do if you decided to change your careers? And I said, I want to do what you're doing. If I can't, affect or move people by the masses, I'll do it one at a time. I loved psychology. I loved, processing and all that. And so, so he was like, go back to school. And I was a kid who never got good grades. I don't like school. I don't read books. And so I was like, no, I don't think I could do that. He said, look, it's only 2 years. I thought you had to have a PhD. He's like, you just need a master's. So at 35, I went back to school. What he didn't tell me was after the 2 years, you need 3,000 hours. And this is where I was like, man, and it took me 5 years.
That's a lot of hours.
It's a lot of hours. And you're underpaid, you're overworked. And so once I experienced all that, I realized the by the time you finish this, you almost no longer want to do this because of it's just the system, and by the time you're out, you start doubting, and I got really lucky because I started this blog and then, started being active on social media. I built a full practice, and then that led to book deals and stuff. So I feel like I got lucky, but if that never happened to me, if I never got on the internet and I was just working in the clinical world, I don't think I'd be happy. I think I would just be punching a clock and wearing wrinkle-free pants and not being myself. And I would be stuck in a job, like a quote unquote job. And that's not what I wanted. And so I was like, man, we got to change this, And so, yeah.
And so what is your book? I used to be a miserable fuck about. I've listened to Single on Purpose, but I haven't read your other two books yet.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
It's a pop-up book. No, I'm just kidding. It's it's about my rebirth, crossing the great divide from boy to man. I'm a late bloomer. I have addiction in my blood. And so it's kind of like once I went through a divorce and started to rebuild myself, just simple things like making my bed, looking inward, taking ownership. So it kind of tracks through kind of like short tips on how to adult, how to grow up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm almost finished. I just have like maybe 4 minutes left on your Single on Purpose book.
Oh, are you listening to it or are you reading it?
I listen to it.
Oh,
yes.
nice.
I love audiobooks.
Yeah, me too.
I've got a baby and there's lots of life going on, right? So if I can take things in an audiobook, and I you know what, John, it is fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
this book is not just for singles. And I think that is one of the lessons that you share right away. It's about building a better relationship with yourself so you can build healthy and meaningful relationships with others.
Yeah.
And we know this, right? This is such a lesson that we're surrounded by, but I think it's just so good.
Thank you so much. And that book, the birth of that book came from me coaching over the years, thousands of mostly women in their 30s who felt less than because they were single.
Yeah.
They hit pause on their life because they haven't found quote unquote the one, and it's like, I'm not Cupid. I couldn't find them the one, but what I could do is I could challenge their beliefs. I could ask themselves, what if you started to connect to you first as you, explore and invest and date and all of that, and that's kind of how that book started was. And then also just realizing we live in an interesting time where we've become baseball cards and swipe culture and ghosting, and the way that people meet today can be damaging, can be, traumatic at times.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You talk about happiness and being single. And this is just like you said, there's this cultural idea that we have to find the one in order to be happy. I mean, that's just so false. I've got so many quotes that I wrote down, John, that I want to share today from your book. And for those of you that are listening, you just have to download it and listen to it, because I also love the fact that you narrate the book, and because you have such good humor. You're so funny.
Oh, I can't.
I was laughing out loud.
Yeah, I wanted to get Morgan Freeman to do it, but he wasn't available. So, yeah, I hate listening to myself. I hate watching my videos. All of that.
No. It's fantastic. So this is the quote I wanted to share. The truth is, you do not have to be in a relationship to be happy. A relationship is not required for you to be happy, of course, right? And you have this funny Barbie analogy.
Yeah, Barbie never needed Ken. Like, what is that about? Ken could be gay. All she needed was that awesome convertible vet. But Barbie's a great example of how society, how advertising, how the world says, okay, here's the house, here's the fancy car, and then here's the man, and this equals quote unquote, success or happy, right? And so as a young kid, when you're playing with Barbie, you're already like being programmed.
You are. You are.
Yeah.
Definitely. And you said it's time to empower singlehood and
Mm,
provide better blueprints for building happiness. It's time to celebrate singlehood, which I think
yeah.
that is really powerful. I do believe that. It's like, why are we questioning? Why are you still single? Well, how ridiculous is that?
Yeah, you go to a party, and if you've been single for a while, like over a year, it's almost like if you don't bring someone, they almost like look at you like something's wrong, or like, are you okay? Or how can I help you? And it's like, no, I'm single. It just means I have choices. You're in a relationship, so you're done. You don't have choices. I have choices. It's like, I think we
Yeah.
should give singlehood a cape. And Mattel, if you're listening, there should be a single Barbie. There should be a Barbie that's like, I don't need a man. I'm good the way that I am right now.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. So, but you know what? There's so much honesty around this, right? When you are single, and there's loneliness, right? But maybe it's not. This was a powerful thing that I learned listening to your book. Is that, of course, it's natural to be lonely. You want to share your life with somebody, right? I think we're
sure.
naturally programmed, like in our
Yes.
DNA,
Yeah,
to
of
want
course.
to be with people and
Right.
share our experiences. But you said there's a difference with feeling lonely and I am lonely.
Yeah.
One is the experience and the other is the identity.
The internalization. Yes. And a lot of my clients, they took the feeling of being lonely, which is a human feeling and we all experience it. But then they tied their worth to it. So their
Yeah,
identity, their value, um, they became someone less than because they were feeling lonely. And the feeling of lonely is okay. We even sometimes we get lonely in relationships too,
yes,
right? So feeling through that. But when we start to think that we're defective because we are alone, I think that's when it could get dangerous.
that's right.
Yeah.
And so just, you talked about radically accepting,
Yes.
radical acceptance,
Yes.
right? Because let's say, we do in our community, we have a lot of people in our community that are wanting to be with a partner. They're
Hmm.
trying many, many different ways to do this, right? And as you know, it can be a huge slog, right? It's like a full-time job. You're online dating. You're
Yeah.
you're asking for introductions. You're doing anything and everything you can, right? And so, but
Also, if you're
you
if you're successful and you're used to putting in this much effort, and then you're used to building things, you're used to just everything that you do is quote unquote successful. But then when it comes to love and relationships, you're frustrated because this is something you can't control.
yes, but I think what you really hone in on is changing your beliefs. So, because even let's say it takes all this time and you are putting all this effort in, rather than it becoming a problem of yours, right? It's like, oh, there's a problem with me. I must not be worthy. I must be faulty in some way.
Hmm.
It's changing your mindset around that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also know it's not easy, right? I don't
Oh,
want to minimize because I've been single for stretches of, say like 4 years. I think that was one of my longest stretches. And I've experienced loneliness. I was wondering, am I ever going to find someone? Am I ever going to be, am I going to have a partner again? Like I didn't know who I would meet next. I felt discouraged. I felt, all those things, right? So I get that that's a real feeling. But if you've been in a relationship, you're going to be in another one. And my big question is not so much who you want to be. I think that's a great question when you meet someone, but how do you want to love? How do you want to love when you find someone? When you find someone who you want to invest in.
so how do you want to love? So
Yeah.
let's talk about that. How do you dive in with your clients on discovering that? Like what
Um,
questions would you ask me to self reflect on? How do you want to love?
Yeah, I would start by examining the black box, right? Many planes have gone down. We're 50% of any relationship. So, not living there, but kind of going back and reviewing from a distance. What do you want to do that's different? How do you want to show up that's different, right? Why did those relationships, why did they not work? And so, exploring old patterns, taking ownership of what you bring to the table, right? And even if you were in a relationship that was toxic or abusive, and of course it was the other person that was toxic or abusive, we still we can still own things, whether it's enabling or whatever it is, right? Our energy. There's always something to own, in any relation, any exploration. And I also think that when you're single, the soil for growth is the richest, right? When you're single, you're man, you don't have one all you have is yourself. And so when you're in a relationship, it's hard to work on yourself, because now you have a partner, and you're doing life with each other, and there's schedules and all this stuff. We get busy very fast. When we're single, we have a lot more time to slow down and work on ourselves. So it's precious time. That's the ticking clock, not the whether you could have a baby or you getting older. The ticking clock is, you're going to meet someone. How do you want to love when you do? You better get to work,
Yes. And actually taking this time to celebrate being single so that you can do this work. It's almost uninterrupted work where you're not creating that container with somebody else. I love this.
Yes.
And that's one of the things you do talk a lot about in the book is, this is, rather than having this focus so much on the we, okay, this is actually great. I've got this time for me. Learning and exploring yourself.
Yeah, and I don't think we practice that much. I think when we get into, even from like the high school days, we want to satisfy the other person, take care of the other person. Many of us grew up very fast, right? And so this idea of taking care of you is foreign. We're not used to it. We know logically we should do it, but we actually don't practice it. And so when you're single, it's really important to practice that. I took a lot of time going on motorcycle rides by myself, taking myself out to dinner, sitting at diners, speaking of audiobooks, listening to a lot of audio, going on long walks, ditching work, going to the beach, just a lot of things that I never did alone, getting comfortable with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talking about understanding your patterns. Yes. I have a question from one of our communities, community questions. And this person's asking, I'm just realizing after my recent breakup that I abandoned people. I didn't abandon this relationship physically, but a big reason we broke up was because my partner said I didn't seem as connected as I once did. I've always been called very empathetic, sweet, in touch with my emotions. But then there is this. I didn't even realize I was the real problem in this sense until recently. I'm the kind of person to try to change my bad behaviors. So now that I'm realizing this, I need to know how to change.
Yeah. And I think what a great revelation that, I actually abandoned. And that could come from fear, that could come from, it's so many different reasons. That's the behavior that's coming from somewhere. So the next piece is to explore why. Why do you run? Are you afraid of rejection? Are you afraid of intimacy? Do you believe you don't deserve love? There's so many things that could possibly be promoting this kind of behavior. And so once you follow that string down, and it's going to be, tied to your story, what happened, all of that kind of stuff, and you understand yourself better, and you're like, oh, I abandoned, and here's why I do it. I run, I hide, here's why I do it. Then you can actually start to work on that. You can actually process that. You can untangle that. And then you could try to do something different, in your next relationship. And that's where growth happens and change. Yeah.
This next, the next community question I have is regarding patterns as well. I think I'm a 35-year-old male, currently single, and have recently been reflecting on past relationships. I realize I've never felt truly happy or content in a long-term relationship. I have no idea what it feels like. I've always just kind of drifted along, going with the flow, thinking, this is nice, she's pretty. These relationships have lasted 2 to 7 years. I still like and respect these women and keep in touch, but I never felt we clicked. The closest I've ever felt to things being right was over 10 years ago, but the relationship was over after a few weeks when I had to move for work. How do you know when your relationship is right? Am I chasing a pipe dream?
Oh, that's interesting. The beginning of that question made me very sad. It made me think of a lot of people.
It's a long time to be with somebody and not.
and not kind of like this idea of just going through the motions, being with someone because it's convenient or because you don't feel like you have choices, right? All of that. And then so many people are in relationships like that. Being with someone because you don't want to be alone, like that kind of stuff, right? So that makes me very sad. Being aware of that. And then I think the first question is, what does happy look like to you? What do you want? What are you not willing to negotiate? Many people like this person just, I guess the word is settle. Someone likes them and they're like, oh, great, someone chose me. I'm just gonna, but it's like, it's okay. And relationships, I mean, this, they're so hard already. If you don't have a running start, if you don't have, common values and chemistry and all this stuff, whatever is important to you, man, like it takes so much work to build. You got to have a foundation so that investment is worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the last of his question was, how do you know when your relationship is right? Am I chasing a pipe dream?
Well, I don't think it's like I don't think there's a constant that, I think every day is a choice to love. And I think some days it's easy to love and some days it's hard. I think it's cumulative, right? And I think, because you're dropping into your body and you are feeling it. I don't think it's a logical thing. I don't think it's a good on paper thing or checking off boxes. I think it's, this person makes me feel safe. First of all, no one's perfect. No relationship's perfect, right? But, I like what I'm building with this person because it makes me a better version of myself. I like myself more in this relationship. I have a lot to give. I'm transparent. Also, that relationship is challenging me. It's not easy. I'm learning things from this marriage or from this relationship, because that's the whole point of relationships. They should sharpen us and challenge us. So I think it's different for everyone, but those are some of the things that I would look at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Relationship should sharpen us and challenge us.
Yes.
Isn't that the truth?
When I hear people and they're like, oh, we never fight. Like it's a good thing. I'm like, oh, well, then something's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not something to be just, because I think those of us that are in relationships that are, when there's definitely some challenges, of course, it's two people, right?
Yeah.
And then you're going to start questioning your relationship. Well, we definitely have conflicts. Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure. Oh, you never fight. You mean you guys aren't showing up? You guys aren't showing each other your truth. You mean you're hiding? Yeah. Okay. I get it.
So I've got another quote here to share, and it's, we want to love someone and that's okay. We're biologically built that way. What's not okay is losing ourselves because we don't have someone to love, or losing ourselves in the person we have chosen to love.
Yeah. And also that happens over time, right?
Yes.
We don't go into relationships saying, okay, in this one, I'm willing to lose myself. It's a slow drip. It's years, right? But then we wake up one day and we realize, oh, we've negotiated everything. Or we realize, I don't really know who I am, or I'm just in this, but I'm kind of like a leaf floating in this relationship. I have no sense of self. So it's important. And again, this is why I think the runway of being single is important, because if you have built a life that doesn't hang on someone else, and you have connected, or you are working on connecting to yourself and your passions and everything that is your definition of a whole person, then when you find someone, you're not going into it powerless. You're going into it as a whole being, not as someone who's going to easily lose herself in someone else.
That's right. Something you say is there is a difference between compromise and compromise of self. And that's really what, right? If you continue to compromise yourself, you are going to be losing yourself. It's going to eventually, your relationship will go sideways, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Every relationship has compromise, whether we're talking about friendships, relationships with our with our family, but compromising self, right? When you exchange your truth for love, for membership, for approval, for validation, whatever, that's kind of the beginning, I think, of slowly losing yourself, right? Suppressing your voice, your wants, your what you feel you deserve. all of that. And so, yes, relationships require compromise, but not when you're compromising yourself.
Yeah. And you talk about how there's a difference between liking yourself and loving yourself. I really, this is, see, that's really what the root of all of this, a lot of this comes from, right? Is like when you know yourself and you take care of yourself and you
Hmm.
like yourself
Hmm.
and you do all of these things that are very important to have a whole, to feel whole, what you bring into your relationships,
Yeah,
right?
and I get pushback on this because I think not everyone agrees with me. But the thing about love, and I know that with self betterment, the concept of self love, because it's so commercialized, to me almost means nothing now because so many people
Yeah.
say it, they're throwing it in your face. It's become a bumper sticker, right?
Yeah.
Um, Love is a choice. We know people that we love, but we don't really like. We have family members that we love because they are our family, but we don't doesn't mean we actually like them, right? As people, liking has to be earned, right? And so when it comes to yourself, yeah, of course you could love yourself, and that's a choice. I think it's harder to like yourself. I think it's more important to like yourself. Liking yourself requires a journey. Loving yourself is just a decision because liking yourself is earned, right? So that's why I say it's important to like yourself more so than to love yourself.
Yeah. And you do talk about, spending time growing your mind, your body, your spirit, all of those things combined on a daily basis or regular basis, right? And that's all
Yeah,
part of liking yourself,
yeah.
nurturing, caring for yourself, just like you would care for someone you love. You
Mhm.
must be caring for yourself on a regular basis in all those areas.
Yeah, the relationship with self has those components, the mind body. In elementary school, the laminated posters where it says, "Here are the four food groups, and this
Yeah.
is what you need to eat for a well balanced meal." And I think, of course, later we find out those are made by, I think, meat and dairy. It's
Yeah.
propaganda, but it's like that. It's like your relationship with yourself. Requires mind, body, and soul, requires the whole self. It's not just one thing that you're doing, but it's this idea of exploring and connecting to a complete person.
This that's something that you talk about is one of your chapters is one of the most common mistakes in relationships is letting yourself go. This is so common. When like especially
Yeah,
long-term relationships.
yeah,
You're, next thing you know, you're 10 years in and 10 pounds heavier. You're not working out anymore. You're wearing,
yeah.
I mean, I'm absolutely guilty of coming home and wearing my joggers like for the rest of the night.
Sure,
That's not
sure,
going
but
to
that's
change. That's always the way I've been after
yeah.
like, that's
Um,
fine, I think.
you
But
know what? You know what this is called, Robin? It's called false advertising.
yeah,
um, I think we all have a responsibility. And listen, when we get into relationships, I get it. Take out Netflix, whatever, and there's comfort to that. I'm talking about really letting yourself go. I'm talking about
yes.
not taking care of yourself. And it's less about aesthetics, more about, I mean, people who don't take care of themselves. It's just not attractive, right? And so, who you were when you met the person, letting that go is unfair and irresponsible because that's not what your partner signed up for, right? Why they were attracted to you is partly how you are and you taking care of yourself, and part of that is also fanning the flames of what you're passionate about and going out and making a dent in the world and all that stuff, right? And so if all that is gone slowly, then I don't know. I just think it's dishonest. That being said, we do go through winters. There are times that we are going to, eat a lot of chips and sit on the couch, and that's okay. It's part of life. But generally speaking, we have a responsibility to take care of ourselves for sure.
Yes, and it's all aspects. This is just like you said, this is not just physical. If you one of the community questions is this: what do you say or do if you're in a relationship and your partner is not taking care of themselves? How do you approach that lovingly? I have had many conversations with them about this and nothing seems to be changing. Do you have advice or words on how to talk about this in the best way?
Yeah, I would say empathy and kindness is always the door to go into. You're not going into it like what I just said. This is false advertising. You're not going into it like, hey, you're not who I fell in love with, right? You're not going
Yeah.
into it with pointed fingers. I think you have to go into it with empathy in that maybe that person is going through a winter, exploring what is going on inside, not blaming them for what's on the outside or what's not happening. And also leading by example. Ask yourself, are you taking care of yourself?
Yeah.
And then supporting your partner, asking, coming from love in that, like, I care about you. Is something wrong? How can I support you? You're, not socializing with friends. You're not working out. You're eating like shit. I'm worried about you. So it should be coming from a place of care and love, not, what is this bullshit? I want my money back,
Return policy. No. Something we talked about during the live IG was managing conflict. And I really like how you explained. Can you explain it again, John, just about having this safe, really just having this safe container?
Yeah. Fighting is, I think people think fighting is a negative thing. And it's not about how many times we fight, because we're going to fight. We should fight. It's about how we fight. So if we have the tools and ability to approach any conflict with love and resolve it, where people aren't going to bed with resentment, oh man, that's what's going to make the relationship sustainable. I think it's one of the greatest tools. It's one of the primary colors, and many people don't have this. Many people are very reactive, and they fight, or like that couple that says we never fight. They avoid fighting, of course, right? Mm-hmm. So there's no growth in that. So learning to fight in a healthy way, learning to resolve differences and use those differences to grow and evolve. I think that's the nectar of a relationship.
Yeah. So the next two community questions aren't necessarily about how to handle conflict, but there's definitely conflicting ways of being in this relationship. The first is, what can I do when my partner chooses to surround themselves with bad people? My boyfriend has two guy friends that constantly overindulge in drugs and encourage my boyfriend to do as well. They've also encouraged him to cheat on me. Oh, there's been several times these friends have even come up to me and been rude and unkind. When my boyfriend doesn't see them as much, he's a much different person, kinder, sweeter, healthier person. I'm at a loss as to what to say or do in this situation.
Yeah. Oh, that's tough.
It is.
Most people go toward ultimatums, which I don't think is fair. I think what you can do is express how those relationships impact you, how they make you feel, what it's how they're impacting your life. And then if your partner cares and loves you, they're going to consider that, mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to, end all relationships and do whatever you say, but it should be a factor. Your happiness, your well-being, since you're doing life together, should be a factor on who he chooses to surround himself with and invest in. That being said, these are his relationships, so you can't force someone to not be friends, because they have history or whatever. Like at the end of the day, it's his choice. But I think it's important to express how that relationship impacts you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So important.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is about having kids. My girlfriend and I have different views on what is the timeline to start a family, and I'm getting scared to commit any further at this point in our relationship. I'm feeling ready more than ever to start a family, but she's not there. I feel like we're on completely different timelines, and yet I do see myself with her. It's kind of a heart versus reason dilemma. I'd love some perspective on this.
Yeah, I was just going to have a blanket answer. Just don't have kids. Everyone, don't have kids. No, I'm kidding. I have a 2-year-old. I'm like, oh my God, This is so hard.
It's a lot.
It's so much. It's also something that no one really talks about. They just post the cute photos of their kids. They don't talk about what they've lost and how hard it is and the sleepless nights. But anyway, I think people change their minds. I'm 48 and I just, 2 years ago I had a kid. I didn't think I was going to have a kid, and then I did. So I would leave room for that. I wouldn't label this and stamp this as you're never going to have kids. I would keep it a conversation, and I would be open to people changing. And a lot of times in relationships, someone wants a kid like now, or this is when they really want one, the other person doesn't. And then it flips and the other person comes around and then suddenly you don't want to have a kid. And then, you don't want to have a kid with someone who isn't, ready or on the same team as you. So I would wait, I would be patient, I would communicate. And when the timing is right and both of you guys are on the same page, then do it.
And alternatively, you may have to end the relationship if that doesn't change.
Sure, right? That's fair. I mean, if it's a non-negotiable and that is something that you want in your life, and the person is back and forth and ambivalent, and you feel like, okay, I'm getting older, sure, that's enough. I mean, it's people who want different things, and that's going to create drift. So
yeah, absolutely. I have a few questions with dating. The first is about sex. And I think this is such a common question and common conversation. When you're dating somebody new, when is it the best advice on when to take the relationship to the next level and sleep with that person? I've heard so many different viewpoints on best time to, and I'm curious what you think.
I think we should stay away from numbers like, oh, how many days do you wait until you call someone back? How many days do you wait until you have sex? You know what? I think it all comes down to you and what works for you. And that may be on the first date, or that may be, a year later. Whatever works for you and you're honest about it, and that's your decision. And that decision is going to promote your relationship with itself. That's all that matters, I wouldn't force myself to do things because of society or shoulds, or this is the quote unquote norm. I think the word normal is dangerous.
Mm-hmm. So the next one is about, just dating. I'm dating in my 40s. We run up against many obstacles: kids, work, sports, friends. Finding the time together can be such a challenge. Do you have the best advice for ways to bridge the gaps, especially for someone whose love language is time spent? And it's very difficult for these two people to come together and spend time with their busy lives.
Yes.
Especially trying to get to know somebody new, right?
Yeah, Google Calendar. And you probably do too, Robin. You guys are both busy. Everything is on that calendar. This is when we do date night. This is when we go to lunch. This is what, I think it's about a change in mindset. And the change in mindset is, and this comes from personal experience, try to find beauty in the contrast. So with my current partner, we are very different. We speak different love languages. We have different attachment styles. We have different humor. And at first there was a lot of resistance. And I started comparing this to the old relationships. And I thought, okay, this maybe isn't going to work because we're so different. And then I realized, you know what? There's actually beauty in the differences, and what if I started to look at the differences and start to lean into them and really try to find beauty in our contrast, instead of seeing our differences as a crowbar, or a sign that we shouldn't be together. And once I started doing that, I started to appreciate things, or how she was that was very different than me, And so I think that's a big part of building something with someone. And also, I don't think that has anything to do with the question, but I want to get in there.
No, I really like that though, John. Beauty in the contrast.
Yeah.
And you do talk about creating new love experiences, new definitions of love, whether you're single or in a relationship. So this is a new and you said your definition of love should be naturally evolving and changing.
Yes. And oh man, I could talk about this for days because I'm so passionate about this topic. We want to trace old love experiences just subconsciously because they smell familiar, because it's what we're used to. And usually young love was unhealthy love, right? When we're young, we're just going by feelings. We don't have tools. We don't have awareness. And so as we get older, if we don't create new love experiences, we're just going to chase our tail. We're just going to, the only thing that's going to change our faces, and we're just going to create the same dynamic. So if you want a new love experience, you actually have to give yourself one. So that includes who you pick, that includes how you love. I mean, so many choices, right? But I think if that's the North Star, if your goal isn't just to have hot sex, but your goal is to give yourself a new love experience, so you're convincing your body that there's something different. So it's not just a logical thing. You are literally reconditioning and rewiring your body, where you're like, okay, this is what I want. I didn't know that existed. I just gave myself the experience. And now that it's proof, I feel it. This is what I want. You're just going to have a clear picture of the kind of love, and it's going to be different than what you're used to.
So creating new experiences so that you can create a new definition of
Yes,
love.
and break free from old patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you really do that, John, if you're single and you're not, you're looking for your partner and you desperately want to change your definition of love because you just keep looking into the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying, like, just can you give us an example of
Yeah,
something?
I mean, one example is what I just said about my struggle with labeling differences because they're not the same. So if I didn't start finding beauty in the contrast in this relationship, I would have broken up with her, and I would have found someone who was similar, or who someone that I was more used to, and then that would have just kind of traced old patterns. But because I decided to lean into my discomfort and actually find beauty in the differences, now I'm creating a new love experience, right? And so once I swim past those breakers, I'm like, oh, this is different. I've never had this before. I actually like it. It's actually healthier. It's actually, whatever, right? And so a lot of people don't swim past that. A lot of people, because it brings resistance and it's not what they're used to, they will label it and leave it. Creating a new love experience it's hard because it's like foreign and new and different,
Yeah. My favorite part of your book is the last chapters, and you talk about getting a life, right? And this is we just so many of us are just like, we just kind of get swept up in our jobs and our families, and these are all very important things, but it's like, what about you? What fuels you, right? You say, because there's more to life than just who we choose to love, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
many of us forget that a rich, colorful life doesn't just happen. We have to engage in it for color to appear, and it
Yeah.
requires effort and intention. Yes.
Yes. And that's a lot of times that's very strong when we're single, and then we get into a relationship, it kind of goes out the window. But also when we're single, a lot of people don't have a life because they're just focusing on trying to find someone, and that becomes their life,
Yes.
and they're lined with desperation. One of the things that really helped me when I was single, and it was like a mantra, I said it over and over again. It's number one, where are you going? And then number two, who's going with you? If you reverse that order, you're going to be going by yourself. So one of the things that when I was married, she was the sun I revolved around. I put her up on a pedestal. I'm going with her was first, and then where am I going was second. So passion, purpose, things that are greater than me was second. So when that relationship didn't work out, my whole life crumbled, right? Where are you going? What are you doing? That should be first. Who are you going to share your life with? I think should be second.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Because then it doesn't hang on the relationship,
and maintaining that in your relationship is so important. You talk
Yes.
about the three things, right? And is having keeping your own life and your own self going, is joy, which is so important. Engagement in your life, right?
Yes.
Engaging and meaning and self-worth.
Yeah, and I say those three things because I never had those things. I didn't know that joy is produced. It just doesn't fall on your lap. You have to go out and create a space for joy.
Yeah.
Engagement, to actually engage, eye contact, conversations, engage in life. Don't just be in your head. I just was in my head the whole day, right? And then meaning. Was that the third one, meaning?
Yeah.
I don't remember what I wrote.
It's meaning and self-worth.
building a life on meaning. What matters to you? What's meaningful? And also, when you meet someone, this is also what makes people attractive.
Yes.
You know, if someone isn't able to produce joy, they have no meaning in their lives, and they're not engaging. What are they? They're just, cardboard cutout. Like what are they? And so, if you have these things, working toward these things, you're going to be more attractive, and there's a higher chance you will meet someone. Yeah.
I've been remarried since August, so very new in our relationship.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And we had a baby in May, and he ended up in ICU for 6 weeks after he was born. He was very sick. And, in the meantime, I've got 2 other daughters that were having a very hard time with blending our family. It was just one thing after another.
Sure.
And I said to my best friends who I was missing, and, just that contact, right? Talk about like engagement. I was definitely so immersed in all this stuff that was going on, but I was missing the engagement piece with people outside of, my sick son and all the drama going on in my family, but also the joy. Like it was a huge piece that I was missing. And I said, like, I need to create more joy. I feel this huge, it's like you get sucked under, right? And it can be the little things, but it's just so important in life. All those 3 things are key.
Yeah. Absolutely. And from my own personal experiences, it's not like it's something that I studied or read in a book. It's through my own life and lacking those things where I realized how important they were.
Yeah. So I've got one last community question before we say goodbye.
Yeah.
And this person's asking, I feel like I am pretty balanced when it comes to maintaining my life and wholeness in my relationship. What if my partner is not doing the same? He used to have time with friends, follow his joy through activities he enjoyed, working out. It's affecting our sex life, the fun we have together in our relationship. Do you have advice on how I can help him engage in his own life outside of our home and family?
Yes. Here's what I'm seeing. I care about you. I'm worried about you. How can I support you? What is going on? Here are the differences that I'm seeing. You're no longer spending time with your friends. I'm noticing that you're not happy. You're not who you used to be. How can I support you? So I think coming at it more from love and support, not, get off your ass. I'm not attracted to you anymore. So coming at it from a holding instead of grabbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
And if the person doesn't change his or her life over a certain amount of time, and it's now the person is taking you hostage and your quality of life, it's okay to say, hey, this doesn't work for me anymore too.
Yeah, and getting therapy around that. And that's the other thing we talk about is the importance of therapy. If you can afford it and you've got, if you can invest in that in your relationship and with yourself and with your partner, that can be such a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely changed my life.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so happy that we had this time together, John. And I would recommend anybody download, listen to your book or read your book. But I got so much out of it. Even, I'm in a relationship, but it was just really, I thought the biggest lesson was about it is about yourself, right? Self-care and going inward, self-reflection, so that you can be your best self in your relationship, whether you are in one or not in one. So,
right. Yeah. Robin, thank you for having me on your podcast, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's important. And thank you.
So John, what are you working on right now that we can point everybody to your website, and what are in your work life? What is your passion these days?
Yeah, I just turned in another book. It's called It's Not Me, It's You. And it's my first relationship book. And I wrote it with my partner, who's also a therapist. So that comes out in September, which we're
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you and Vanessa wrote the book together.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very, it was terrifying because it's very transparent. I didn't want to, we said if we're going to write a relationship book, we don't want to be the quote unquote therapist experts who are coming at people. We want to come with people. So that means we need to show all our wounds and shortcomings and, all of that. And so, it was hard to write it because we had to be so vulnerable and transparent.
Wow, I can't wait to listen to it. I hope it's going to be an audiobook.
Yeah, it will for sure.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you again, John, and I know we'll see each other again soon.
Yeah, thank you. Be well.
Take care.
Bye.
Please visit realloveready.com to become a member of our community. Submit your relationship questions for our podcast experts at reallovereadypodcast@gmail.com. We read everything you send. Be sure to rate and review this podcast. Your feedback helps us get you the relationship advice and guidance you need. The Real Love Ready podcast is recorded and edited by Anna Lafreniere. Transcriptions by Otter.ai and edited by Anna Lafreniere. We at Real Love Ready acknowledge and express gratitude for the Coast Salish people, the stewards of the land on which we work and play, and encourage everyone listening to take a moment to acknowledge and express gratitude for those that have stewarded and continue to steward the land that you live on as well.